Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Cuff, and I am the Quality Defects and Recalls Manager at the HPRA. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about our Quality Defects and Recalls program, and the focus of today's talk will be on quality risk management. So a little bit about what do we do. So the QDR program, we investigate on a risk basis reports of suspected or confirmed quality defects in medicines and related active substances. We make decisions about the need for recalls and other risk mitigating actions for the Irish market, as well as any other required actions. For example, is a for cause inspection required? I'm sure we're all aware of the definitions, but just in case, a quality defect is an unplanned attribute of a medicinal product or component which may affect the quality, safety, and/or efficacy of the product, and/or which is not in line with the approved market authorization or product registration file for the product or component. And we define a recall as a retrieval from the marketplace of a batch or a number of batches of a medicinal product as a result of a quality defect or a non-compliance. Retrieval of a batch or batches is considered a recall once the batch has been QP released and left the site of manufacturing, where the QP released the batch to the Irish market. So our program, quality risk management, is the core principle underpinning the QDR program in the HPRA. And risk-based decision-making runs through all aspects of our processes. And this, of course, is based on ICH Q9 as well as Chapter 8 of the EU GMP Guide. It includes decisions about the potential risks that the defect issue may pose to patients and animals, as well as the classification of the defect issue, whether it's critical, major, minor, non-justified. But it also includes many other decisions about, for example, prioritizing work. We've had over 2,100 reports received in 2021. Obviously, we have to risk assess to see which ones need to be tackled urgently. We also investigate whether market action is needed and what level of market action is commensurate with the level of risk. We also decide whether cessation of product supply or a recall may be inappropriate given product shortage considerations. We don't want to leave the market short of a particular product. The adequacy of company root cause analysis and proposed CAPAs, we also make decisions on that. We decide, as I said, whether a for cause inspection is needed, and then we also decide on whether additional or increased regulatory oversight needs to be applied to the manufacturer or the MAH as a result of the QDR issue. This is just a little pop-up. It's a reminder. So it's Chapter 8 of the EU GMP Guide, which specifically refers to complaints, quality defects, and product recalls. And this has multiple references to risk-based decision-making. There's a new revision of the ICH due on quality risk management, which will provide new guidance on risk-based decision-making. And you'll see these little pop-ups throughout the talk. And this is really where we have our little take-home messages that we would ask you to take back to your company and reflect on. So the HPRA work on quality defects is also based on the compilation of union procedures that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. In case not, it's a set of procedures that each EEA medicines GMP inspector is expected to follow, and it specifies the quality system requirements for each inspectorate. There are two specific quality defect related procedures in the compilation, and they were last reviewed in 2021, and the revision work was led by the HPRA. So I'd just like to draw your attention to those. The first one is the management and classification of reports of suspected quality defects in medicinal products and risk-based decision-making, and the management of rapid alerts arising from quality defects risk assessment. There's a lot of useful information there, so if you haven't seen the new revisions, we'd urge you to have a look at that. One thing we'd like to draw your attention to from the update is that there's a move away from using critical, major, and minor in relation to quality defects, and instead they're being classified as high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. So the high risk ones are defects which are potentially life-threatening or could cause serious risk to health, for example, particles in an injectable, a product mix-up issue, or microbial contamination. So the definitions haven't really changed. It's just that the names high risk, moderate risk, and low risk are being applied rather than critical, major, and minor. And the classification is, as usual, based on potential for harm, route of administration, the patient cohort, the extent of the defect, the method of sale or supply, detectability, etc. So we have this year our first compilation of data for over 20 years of quality defect reports. And as you can see, we went from 125 reports in 2002 up to 2,118 reports in 2021. Of those 2,118 reports in 2021, we classified 408 as critical, 1,416 as major, 294 others. And this led to a total of 124 recalls of product from the market during 2020. So why are we seeing such an increase in the number of QDR reports? We've put it down to a number of factors. The first one is there is increased reporting by manufacturers and MAHs, partly as a result of an increased focus on quality defect reporting by HPRA, GMP and GDP inspectors. We also have increased clarity on what is reportable via more detailed guidance from the HPRA, and we are actually updating our guide at the moment, so hopefully there'll be even more increased clarity once that new guide is released. Other factors include increased globalization of manufacturing and supply chains in general. This increased complexity results in increased risks of things going wrong throughout the process. There's increased complexity in packaging, especially in the use of, for example, pen-based delivery devices for our biological products, and we get many defect reports received about those types of products. Brexit was another contributory factor. The HPRA became a supervisory authority for more manufacturing sites as locations of batch certification moved to Ireland, and this meant that the HPRA gets directly involved in more quality defect issues involving centralised products. And we also had a large number of quality defect reports in 2021 for COVID-19 vaccines. But I'd just like to reassure everybody that this was due to hypervigilance really in the vaccination centres at the start of the vaccination process, where it was considered, every single vial was considered valuable. So we had a number of reports on, for example, coring. The number of reports received may be quite large in terms of our numbers in the HPRA, but in the context of the total number of doses of vaccination administered, it's actually quite a small number. So at the end of the day, no major issues were identified with the COVID-19 vaccines, just to reassure everybody on that. So we receive reports for both human medicines and also for veterinary medicines, and we've just broken down some of the data here. For human medicines quality defects reports in 2021, we received 2,033, and that was up from 1,408 in 2020, and the breakdown of the numbers can be seen there. For veterinary medicines, we received 85 reports during 2021. And of those, 12 were considered critical or high risk, 35 major or moderate risk, and 37 were low risk or minor. We also receive some reports that are not justified. There was one veterinary not justified report received in 2021 and 21 reports for human medicines. So who made the reports to the HPRA? So for human medicines, we received 32% of our reports from pharmaceutical manufacturers, distributors, and MAHs. 39% of reports came from pharmacists, and 26% of the reports we received came from other competent authorities in other countries. For veterinary medicines, the breakdown is almost 50-50 between pharmaceutical manufacturers, distributors, and MAHs, and reports from other competent authorities, slightly higher for the other competent authorities. The breakdown of reports are here. So for human medicines, 33%, so that's 679 cases in 2021 related to contamination. Now this breaks down to physical contamination, microbial contamination, and chemical contamination. So for chemical contamination there, we would be including, for example, nitrosamine contamination, as well as microbial contamination, and for example, coring would be physical contamination, as we would have seen for a number of the vaccines. Product prep admin issues, again, these generally refer to pre-filled pens or pre-filled syringes. So 25% of the quality defect reports we received for human medicines related to that type of issue. And non-compliance specifications, which is quite wide, it could be appearance, it could be incomplete blisters. there was 133 reports made to us during 2021 for those. 104 reports were made to us on stability issues, and we had 90 cases concerning falsification, generally on other markets. The Irish market has not been found to be impacted by falsification so far. For veterinary cases, 44% of veterinary cases refer to stability issues, and that was 37 out of the 85 reports I think we had in 2021. And then that was closely followed, 9% of cases were for contamination, 9% of cases for non-compliance with the market authorization, and 9% for non-compliance with GMP. So it's interesting to see the difference in the various breakdowns between human and veterinary medicines. So these are actions that were taken during 2021. So for human medicines, we had a total of 117 recalls of product from the market. So here you can see the breakdown of that. 84 of the 117 were recalls to pharmacy, retail, or vet level. Actually, for humans, it was pharmacy or retail level. And then we had 16 recalls to patient level, or where patient level action was required. 8 recalls to primary wholesale level, 9 recalls to secondary wholesale level. Of those 117 recalls, 16 related to products that were manufactured in Ireland. For veterinary medicines, 6 of the 7 recalls were to vet level. 1 recall of veterinary products was to primary wholesale level. We also need to take, where a recall may not be warranted or where a recall may not be possible due to a shortage issue, we may also issue communications to healthcare professionals about the products, warning them of the quality defect, and maybe requesting them to take some action. So we had 43 caution and use notifications issued in relation to human medicines in 2021, and we had 1 cautionary and use notification issued for a veterinary medicine in 2021. We also issued 3 rapid alerts to other competent authorities during 2021 for human medicines. So this is to alert other competent authorities about issues that we found on the Irish market, but that may have impact on their markets. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in my talk. So to break down, why did we recall products during 2021? So for human medicines, 33 of the recalls related to contamination issues, 26 of the recalls related to validated transport time excursions, 15 related to cold chain temperature excursions, 13 were related to non-compliance specifications, 6 for stability issues, and 6 for erroneous distribution, and you can see the rest of the breakdown there. For veterinary medicines, we had 3 recalls due to contamination and 1 each then for non-compliance with specifications, stability, MA non-compliances, and lack of sterility assurance. I mentioned earlier that we had 3 rapid alerts issued to other competent authorities, and the reasons for that was, the first one was the shedding of particulates from a filter component in a product for infusion, which had the potential to contaminate the actual product. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a case study I have later on. The second rapid alert was due to falsified medicines detected in a number of third country markets. The genuine products were manufactured in Ireland, but there was no evidence that the falsified batches are anywhere near the Irish market. The third rapid alert we issued was due to a Braille readability issue, which was due to the misplacement of the FMD, that's the Falsified Medicines Directive, the anti-tamper device sticker, which had been placed over the Braille on a particular pack. And Braille non-compliance issues are frequently seen in the HPRA sampling and analysis program. There's low dot height, where the Braille is not in line with the market authorization, or they use the wrong Braille format. In 2020, 46% of the packs checked by our colleagues in the sampling and analysis program were found to be non-compliant for Braille. That was down a little bit in 2021 to 18%, but it's still quite a high figure. And my sampling and analysis colleagues have just asked me to remind everybody about the importance of the Braille on packets. So these are the questions that we'd like you to take away. What QC checks are your labs doing on Braille? Are they checking the incoming outer cartons? Are they checking the finished packs? How adequate and robust are those checks? Are the QC labs checking against the Braille declarations made by the MAHs to the HPRA? And do the QC labs know what is in those Braille declarations? So please go back and check on that. So the top categories of quality defects in 2021 for human use products manufactured in Ireland. The main number of reports, as I said earlier, were due to product prep or admin issues, mainly to do with pre-filled pen and pre-filled syringes. 31% of the reports for products manufactured in Ireland related to those issues. 13% related to stability, out of spec or out of trend issues, and other contamination issues, 12%, MA non-compliance issues, 7%, errors in printed artwork, 7%, non-compliance specification, 6%. So this is for human products manufactured in Ireland. And the recalls for human use products manufactured in Ireland related to total parenteral nutrition batches, which had too low of a concentration of sodium chloride. There was a hospital level recall in that case. Elemental impurities above the ICH Q3D acceptable limit. We had wholesale level recalls for that. Cloudiness in infusion products, indicating potential lack of sterility. We had hospital level recall. Transit time excursions, hospital level recalls. Azot impurity, we had pharmacy level recalls. Caution in use letters and package leaflets which had not been securely attached to packs. We had a wholesale level recall for that, and we had a hospital level recall for erroneous distribution of a number of empty O2 cylinders. Other recalls we had, so the most up-to-date we had was in March 2022. We had a pharmacy level recall of quinapril or HCT tablets, which had nitrosamine impurities at levels exceeding the safe limit. In January 2022, we had a pharmacy level recall of cyclosporin eye drops due to crystallized particles in the product. In January 2022, we also had a patient level recall of zinc sulfate capsules. These were actually a food supplement, but there were 100 rogue white tablets and a rogue package leaflet were found in the pack for a medicinal product. I think it was diltiazem. In April 2021, we had a patient level recall of 2 liothyronine levothyroxine products. There was an under-concentration of actives in the tablet. In November 2020, a hospital level recall of glucose product. There were cracks in the glass vials leading to sterility assurance risks. And in May 2020, there was a recall of an IMP from a clinical trial in children, and there was a product mix-up in different arms of the trial. So you can see there's a wide range of reasons that you may have to recall a product or a batch. So could similar quality defect issues occur at your manufacturing site? For example, for contamination, the majority of recalls in 2021 related to contamination. That was the total number of recalls, so 29%, almost 1/3. And there were additional recalls due to lack of sterility assurance, another potential route for contamination. And the earlier presentation today on the HPRA's GMP inspection programme and its deficiency findings referred in many places to contamination issues and also to poor control over aseptic operations. 105 of the major deficiencies identified in production, 30% related to deficient contamination control or cleaning validation, and a further 13% related to deficient controls for aseptic operations. And it is of note that production and premises and equipment, which are important in relation to contamination controls, were the second and third largest areas in which major deficiencies were cited in 2018 to 2021. So you're all familiar with the GMP guide. So Chapter 1 on PQS states that the manufacturer must manufacture medicinal products so as to ensure they are fit for their intended use, comply with the requirements of the market authorization or clinical trial authorization, and do not place patients at risk due to inadequate safety, quality, or efficacy. The vast majority of quality defects that are reported to the HPRA are manufactured using qualified equipment, validated processes, and trained staff. So here I think we need to think about the effectiveness of quality risk management in GMP facilities. Why are these validated manufacturing processes producing defected batches of medicine? How robust has the hazard identification part of risk assessment been, and to what extent has risk assessment been integrated into qualification and validation activities? How can true risk-based qualification and validation be achieved? So again, these are the questions we'd like you to take back to your company and consider. So we can look now at a contamination-related case study. This was a very interesting one from 2021. Here we had a finished product manufacturer in Ireland contacted the HPRA to advise it to be notified by a filter supplier about a recall of certain lots of filters. Certain lots of filters which had been produced on one identified cutting machine were shedding an unusually high number of particulates of greater than 100 microns. The filter supplier did not have a specification for particles, but had concluded that the particle count was high and unacceptable. Particles were of three types: filter membrane material, filter housing material, and cellulose. The 5-micron sterile filter was co-packed in the carton of an infusion medicinal product and used to provide protection for patients against incomplete reconstitution of the product. There were 22 impacted lots of the 5-micron filter supplied to the Irish manufacturer, and they had been packed into greater than 100 finished product batches for greater than 40 markets. So you could see here that there was a very wide impact for this issue. There was no quality defect with the actual medicine inside the packs. The defect related to the filters only. No ADRs had been reported to the MAH, which could be linked to the defect. The filter particles had the potential to be infused into the patient, including a pediatric cohort from 1 month in age, and this really highlighted the importance of this issue and the great potential for harm here. The probability of harm to patients, however, was assessed as low by the manufacturer, taking into account various factors. And a product or a batch recall would have resulted in a shortage on some markets, and in some markets this was a critical or an essential product. So the recall would have caused more damage, or could potentially cause more damage, than the defect with the filter. So it was a complicated one to manage. So the immediate actions that were taken by the company: the finished product packed with the impacted filters was placed on hold at the manufacturing site and at primary distributors in various countries. The issue was notified to the HPRA and other competent authorities by the finished product manufacturer and the MAH, and a market impact assessment and health hazard evaluation was performed. And the outcomes were that the filter component was withdrawn from all affected finished product batches in Ireland. This was done via a letter sent to hospital pharmacists, and replacement non-impacted filters were supplied to them. A rapid alert was issued by the HPRA to other competent authorities, and recalls did occur in some countries. Another outcome was a for-cause inspection was carried out by the HPRA at the IE manufacturer, and we'll go into the reasons for that in the next couple of slides. So some key observations we had about this case. One issue we had was to really understand the extent of the defect issue. We needed to know which filter lots and finished product batches were affected and which markets were impacted. This was complex and took time, and the company's quality system initially failed to generate and compile accurate data. For example, inaccurate listings of the impacted batches were generated, and a number of impacted finished product batches had been omitted in error from the first list that were supplied to us. Not all impacted markets were identified early on, and this resulted in a number of competent authorities being provided with the incomplete and inaccurate details of which defected batches of finished product were on their markets. At the same time, communications and risk-based decisions needed to be made about the need for risk-reducing actions in the various markets. For example, would they just replace the filter, or would there be an actual recall of the pack from the market, etc. And again, a take-home question: how much assurance do you have in your company's ability to accurately and quickly link specific lots of components and starting materials with the finished product batches and markets? So understanding the risks posed to the patients by the defect was also very complex. There were lots of aspects to consider. There was different patient cohorts, and as we mentioned, this was pediatric down to 1 month in age. Particle toxicological considerations, the potential for foreign body reactions, immunological responses, thromboembolic events, etc. And the adverse reaction reporting rates were also taken into account. So the company did perform a robust and multidisciplinary risk assessment. It devoted considerable effort to assessing the various risks from a scientific perspective, and there was a strong emphasis on understanding the clinical risk presented by the particulate issue. The risk assessments found that the issue was potentially life-threatening for pediatric patients, and that could lead to permanent impairment of body function or permanent damage to a body structure. The risk assessment appeared to indicate a high reliance, however, on the detection of the particles by healthcare professionals. When this aspect was queried by the HPRA, the company clarified that this was not actually the case, but the risk assessment was just unclear on this point. So it just took us a little while to get to the bottom of exactly what the risk was. So it is important to ensure that all risk estimates are clear in relation to how they are arrived at in your health hazard evaluation. A take-home question again, how robust are your company's risk assessment processes to deliver scientifically sound risk estimates and decisions? And a final observation we had was that the level of filter oversight by the finished product manufacturer had been weak. No reassessment or risk review of the supplier had been performed following the defect issue. This was especially important with regard to the change control process in place at the suppliers. The defect issue directly related to a change control that had been poorly assessed and managed by the supplier. The change had been assessed as minor by the supplier and had not been reported to the finished product manufacturer. No consideration had been given by the finished product manufacturer to assigning a more restricted status to the supplier following the incident. And the investigation highlighted weaknesses in the company's general management of suppliers. For example, supplier oversight levels were almost exclusively based on supplier audit outcomes, and not enough attention was paid to supplier performance between the audits or to the intrinsic risks presented by the materials being supplied. And again, with some take-home questions, what kind of risk review processes are in place in your company with regard to suppliers? Is risk review a formal concept in your oversight program? So you'll be glad to know I'm coming to the end of the talk. So we just want to talk a little bit about MA non-compliances. So MA non-compliances are by definition quality defects. 86 cases in 2021, 78 human and 8 vet products, where batches that were out of compliance with the MA had been QP certified to the market. In 33% of these cases, the products are manufactured in Ireland. And this led to 7 recalls and 8 caution and use notifications being required to manage the risk posed to patients and animals by these defective batches. You can see here the breakdown of those MA non-compliances. Excuse me. So there were 86 in total, 41 related to CMC, chemistry manufacturing control issues, 45 related to artwork issues, and again, as we said, 7 recalls and 8 caution and use notifications. So we see the same issues in relation to these MA non-compliances happening year after year, mainly due to failures to implement variations within the required timelines, and this often applies to artwork-related MA changes. For example, failures to reflect updated safety warnings in the package leaflets. There are also failures to submit the artwork variations requested by the HPRA, for example, following PRAC safety recommendations. And we also see issues where changes are implemented prior to variation submission and or approval. And this mainly happens with the CMC changes. For example, resulting in the use of non-registered test methods, non-registered API manufacturers, and non-registered packaging components. So the earlier presentation today on the HPRA's GMP inspection and deficiency findings also referred to non-compliance issues. Of the 111 major PQS deficiencies, 14% related to batch certification or QP oversight. And it is important to note that PQS, which is important in ensuring MA compliance, was the largest GMP area in which major deficiencies were cited in 2018 to 2021. We know contributing factors include poor manufacturer and MAH communication processes, non-robust change control processes which fail to prevent the issues, and weak PQR processes which fail to identify regulatory impacted changes. So take-home questions: is your company vulnerable to these issues? How does your company assure MA compliance? And as a QP, how do you ensure that you are not certifying batches that are MA non-compliant? There is very good guidance in this area. It was a reflection paper on the EMA website for MAHs and GMP, and it was issued in July 2021. You can get that on the EMA website. So here we have just a list of resources that may be helpful to everybody. We would like you to just look out for the ICH Q9 revision, which is due to come out this year. The HPRA are involved in that. And the reflection paper on MAHs and GMP. That's the other one that I've just referred to there on the EMA website. So thank you everyone for your attention. You can contact us, as I'm sure you all know. There is a quality defect reporting form for industry available on the HPRA website, which you can download and fill out. That usually has all of the information that we require. Or you can email us at qualitydefects@hpra.ie. Thanks for your attention.